by telling you, I think most of you know this, but in case somebody is here who doesn't know this, that my dad was lost on Lake Michigan in 1959. And I'm telling you this now because I'm not making this program as a novel with a surprise ending. You know, I don't want to sneak up on anybody. I just want to tell you a story of the tugboat and how it changed through the years and then what happened in the end. So, we'll start out with number one. You might wonder why I have fishing in here. This is the logo for the stock certificates for Booth Fishery. Booth had headquarters in Chicago. Early fishermen thought the fish around here would just never end. You could practically reach your hand in and pull one out. So the fishing industry was really going strong and was at its peak in the 1880s. And the Booth fishery had a large fleet of fishing boats in the Great Lakes and in the Pacific Ocean. They fished with their own tugs. They bought fish from other fishermen. They took the fish to Chicago, canned them, and sold them. Sold all kinds of seafood, both freshwater and saltwater. This is the southeastern point of South Fox Island. Booth picked up fresh fish from various islands, including South Fox, Beaver Island, practically all the islands out there, and mainland ports too. They might have even come to Northport, I'm not sure. This photo shows the southeastern tip of South Fox, where the lighthouse sits. And you can see the tall tower there, which was built in 1937. And the smaller, just white spot was 1867. So that lighthouse has been there a long time. And the flat area just north of there was called Fisherman Flats, because a lot of fishermen had fishing shanties there, sometimes just for a season, just for a while. They might not be there all year long. If you're at Peterson Park and you look out on a clear day, you can see this flat area. You might have, if you've never been out to the isle, wondered, well, why does it go like this? And then there's another little point. That's because you're seeing the Fisherman Flats there toward the end. And just this way of the flats, Booth Fisheries owned a small piece of property, and they had a dock there where fishermen could bring barrels of salted fish. Many of Booth's fish tugs were built by American Shipbuilding in Lorain, Ohio. The top of this photo, on the left, you can see part of the words that say Booth, Booth and Company. I'm not sure where this picture was taken, but it's one of their processing plants or holdover spots, and their fishing boats alongside. In 1911, Booth bought 4 fish tugs that same year, built by American Shipbuilding. And one was the Pittsburgh, which is the subject of this talk tonight. Now, you think it's the Bridgebuilder, but it started out as the Pittsburgh. I don't have a photo of the Pittsburgh that says Pittsburgh on the side, but I know it's the basic design of these 2 tugs here. It had, now I'm not really technical on this stuff to understand what I'm talking about, but somebody might. It had a gross tonnage of 45, and it had a registry official number was 208790. And the registry number is important because it would follow that particular boat through each owner, through each remodeling, through each reclassification. Every time it had to change a name, it still had that same number, which is, you know, pretty significant when you're trying to track history. The fishing industry declined quickly after it was at its peak, and much of that was blamed on Booth Fisheries because of all the suppliers they had around the Great Lakes. They were later bought out by Sara Lee. In 1939, the Pittsburgh was purchased by a Mr. Milo B. Welch of Sault Ste. Marie. He and his wife had some tourist cabins up at the Sioux and along the St. Mary's River, and they used this boat as a tour boat. and they named it Bidewee, which I think means stay a while or linger a while. I think it's a Scottish kind of thing. Now, it doesn't quite look like those tugs that I showed you before. That's because he remodeled it. It was a 65-foot boat. In 1947, it was converted from steam power to an oil screw using diesel fuel. You can see the room there for the passengers in the back and in the front. The Welches had at least 3 tour boats, all named Bidewee. And I collected different postcards that I found on the internet and from people that I knew who are in the postcard business. The first Bidewee they had was a 72-foot saltwater yacht, which was a wood boat. These boats carried thousands of passengers through the Soo Locks and on the St. Mary's River. Some advertisements show the boats, these postcards that I have, and it's been kind of hard to decide for me to figure out which one is, of the 3 boats they had named Bidewee, which one is the one that ended up to be the boat that we bought later. And I believe these 2 are not the Bidewee. Just certain little details about them, but they're very similar. I believe this one is the Bidewee, which became Bridgebuilder, based on the details such as, I don't know what this is called, but I'm sure some of you boaters do. This work around here. Who knows what that is called? Anybody?
Rub rail.
The what?
The front of the boat.
Rub rail?
Gunnel.
Okay. Well, this boat has that, and the boat that I'm familiar with had that, and just certain way the front is designed, and the shape of the pilot house, it made me believe that this is the boat that we were involved with. This is another view of what would become the Bridgebuilder, and you'll notice a lifeboat on the back there, up on top. If you could read the fine print, it says Bidewee on that lifeboat. This was right up there in the locks. I think this is the same boat, but the pilot house has been raised up. I had to do a lot of comparisons back and forth with pictures, but look at that one. Then they raised it up. I'm seeing more similarities to the Bridgebuilder as I go along here. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about this group of ragamuffins here, how raggedy they are. The one on the far left is my great uncle, Ed Widener, from Kingsley. My dad is the littlest one, Sterling Nickerson II, and his brothers Max and Quentin Nickerson. And these boys grew up on a farm, but also around sawmills. Their father was in the mill business, and sometimes they would move here or there, all around the Manistee River, wherever a mill would take them. And this is a steam-powered engine that was taken to various sites used to power the saws. I think this photo was taken about 1929. I know my dad was born in 1922, and he looks maybe 6 or 7 there. This is my dad again, Sterling Nickerson II. Their father was Sterling Nickerson I. And he looks to be about 18 years old there. Still, you see sawmills, boards all around him, logs around him. I lived in Kingsley until I was 12 years old, and there was a sawmill in our backyard. And this is kind of what our yard looked like. And this was our playground. This just shows logs and a little bit of lumber strewn here and there, but there were lots of lumber piles. And us kids, my brother and sisters and I, we would just go help ourselves. Whatever, we wanted to build a shack, take a few boards, nobody cared. There were enough of them to go around. So we were always building something. My dad actually preferred to be an auto mechanic. He worked in a garage in Kingsley, was a very good mechanic. And I think it's really interesting that my son Steve has RC Auto out here on the north end of town. And he and my dad never met each other, but they're so much alike in that way. This is South Fox Island, again. In 1954, a partnership was formed, Sterling Nickerson and Sons, my grandfather and his 3 sons. Now, my dad didn't really want to stop working at the garage. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to own his own machine shop someday. But the father in that family was very persuasive, got all his 3 sons to join up with him, and formed the Nickerson and Sons Lumber Company. And the plan was to lumber South Fox Island. There had been logging there before. I mean, you might think, oh, that's too bad they went and stripped all that virgin timber out of there. But there had been logging there before. The Leo brothers of Suttons Bay did a lot of logging between 1904 and 1921. And there were others even before that. When people started to settle this part of Michigan, most of the travel was by boat. So there were steam engines that needed wood to keep them fired. So there were a lot of wooding stations. There were wooding stations here, Northport, wooding stations on all the islands. So as early as 1859, there was a mill on South Fox Island to cut wood for the wooding station for the steamers. I think there was a little bit of virgin forest there when we started there in a really rough terrain area. It was like up in here. This is the South Fox Dune, which is, you really can't tell there, but it's about 334 feet high. It compares to the Sleeping Bear Dune. So back in here where it was real hilly, there was still some virgin timber that, as far as I know, is still there today. And the Nickerson camp was on the southeastern shore. You can see 2 airstrips here. This is a more recent photo, but we had a strip right there. And the present owner, David Johnson, added that for his jet plane. I spent a lot of time on the island walking down to the lighthouse, walking all around it, my brothers and sisters and cousins. We walked the whole island.
How long is that island?
It's 5 miles long and about 2.5 across, the widest part. If you like, sometime I could give you a program just on the Fox Islands. They have a whole history. This is the big dock for the lumber camp, and I think this is 1955, the first trip that I ever made there. And that kid in the middle is me. My brother standing up, getting ready to shoot somebody with a spear. We would spear fish off the dock, so they had, some spears there that you could do that. And my sister Nancy. And behind us is the Miss Manistee, which was a small fish tug, and we only used it briefly to carry passengers, workers, and food for the cook shanty. Didn't have our own lumber boat at first. This is another view of that fish tug. It's 30 miles from Northport Harbor to South Fox Island. And my dad and his brothers each got their pilot license, so they could, any one of them could pilot a boat back and forth. When I look at this boat now, it's so rickety I can't imagine that I ever rode in it, but I don't know, it worked.
Kathy, could I ask a dumb question? What makes a tug a tug? Like you say, that's a fish tug. What is a tug?
Well, I think it's something with the design is part of it, because it was called a freighter later on,
Oh,
and I think it has to do with the design of it.
I see. Thanks.
Anybody know what this is? Well, it says right on the bottom.
Cherry factory. Good picture.
Familiar scene in Northport, the Northport Cherry Factory. And this sat on the property where Hazrot Park is now, back toward the back of the property by the, what's that called? The Peer Group. The Peer Group building was still there. In fact, I don't know, that looks like the Peer Group way at the top of it, doesn't it?
Does that say 1822?
Doesn't that look like the Peer Group there?
No.
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 The other way.
No? Okay.
It has to be 1932.
It was on the
That's just a photo number, that's not a date on there. It's just somebody's identifying number for their photo. And I think this is the east side of the building. It has the tracks side this way.
That's the, no, I think that's the west.
The west side?
That's facing the street.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So the peer group would be down on the other, to the
Go down the
left.
other way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's the big tower. That there. This is the first lumber boat that we owned, the Tramp. And the reason I was confused on which way that building is because you can see there are railroad cars here that came out from those tracks somehow.
There was a spur line that came out from those tracks in the previous spur line that came down to the, well, what used to be the car ferry dock.
Okay.
And that's where we unloaded the lumber
Right.
and shoved it up those
Yep.
ramps.
So this is 1955. We purchased the 65-foot fish tug again, Tramp, from a fisherman in Charlevoix. This is a load of lumber that had just come from South Fox Island, and it could saw about 15,000 board feet of lumber a day, which is all kind of more than they could keep up with carrying it. A lot of Northport boys, including Dave Johnson, helped unload that lumber. You could hear, it would come in, you know, late in the day sometimes, and they'd have lights, and you could hear the boards slapping all over town. You hear the noise of the, it was, and sometimes, there were a couple times my dad went and got kids out of school to load lumber, and I guess after a while the superintendent didn't like that idea, so he wouldn't let them go. But there's always jobs to do. Any boys in town wanted to load lumber, unload lumber. They had to unload it from the Tramp and then up onto that boxcar that you can see just on this side of the picture. How long did it take to unload it, Dave?
Yeah, we worked all night, probably 12 or 14 hours. For $20.
Yeah, I was gonna say how much did you get paid? Not very much.
Who did he sell the lumber to? Where did he sell that lumber to?
The lumber that came into Northport, some of it went to Cadillac for the St. John's Table Company. Some of it went to Grand Rapids for furniture. And I don't know where else in Michigan. But it also went to Wisconsin. And I'll explain that in a minute. This is another view of the Tramp at the factory dock. This is my dad standing right there. That's his mother holding my sister, who was probably 3 or 4 at that time. Those were good memories, riding in that boat. This is on South Fox, lumberjacks loading logs onto a truck. You can't see the whole thing, but this is part of what's called a jammer. It was like a triangle, up and down, up like that, down, and then it had a pulley on the top where we can't see. And these ropes were hooked onto the pulley, guy over there. And they would hoist those logs up on the truck. That was always fun to watch. It was very dangerous work. You know, people sometimes got hurt. Sometimes they'd get a whole load up there and it would just give way.
Yeah, they had to do everything the hard way, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
No machinery much.
Right. Now, when those trees were falled, depends on whose interpretation you take, you can imagine they get a lot of dirt in them just from landing on the ground. So when they took them to the mill, they would first be rolled into the mill pond to loosen up that dirt because it wasn't very easy on the saw blades. When we lived in Kingsley, like I said, the mill was right in our backyard. Us kids spent a lot of time just fooling around by the mill. I don't know why we're still doing what we're doing. They would let us grab hold of the big lever and pull the log in out of the pond. And it's really interesting to see how a log is processed. This is the Tramp leaving South Fox with a load of lumber. It would take about 3 hours to get back here from the island. 10 miles an hour. That's my dad on the right, on this side, and his brother Quentin Nickerson on the beside him. And this photo was taken by a newspaper man in Petoskey. He had gone to the island and took a lot of photos. That previous one I showed you of loading the logs on the truck was one that was taken at the same time. We lived in Kingsley, which is 50 miles south of Northport, and my dad did a lot of driving, going back and forth. He'd come up here, get on the boat. He was the main pilot for the tramp. His brother Max preferred to work in the woods with the men, and his brother Quentin did the bookkeeping and processed orders and all that kind of thing. Graded lumber. My dad didn't really like working in the sawmill, I said to you before, but he liked the engines and he liked piloting the boat. When school let out in 1957, our family moved to Northport. In this picture, this is the day that we moved. Mom and Dad in the back, of course. This is my brother Sterling, that's me. Sister Nancy, my brother John, my sister Evelyn. And this is our blue Pontiac that was so rickety that we could be riding down the road and you could look out the bottom and see the road. Anybody that starts a business, you probably know it. You know, it's hardship. People might think that you have oodles of money because you're doing this big project, and actually you might not have any because you're doing this big project. And that's kind of how it was with us. I remember one of the kids in school in Northport said to me, "If I had all the money your family had, I'd burn some of it." But we still used that car that you could see the road when you went down it. We were excited to move to Northport. Our mom told me later she's kind of feeling sorry for us because we had to move, but I remember being excited about something, a different place, you know. We had been to Northport several times, just come up here while the boat was being loaded or to go to the island for a day or two. But the plan was that once the lumbering was done on South Fox, we would move back to Kingsley. This photo was taken in our yard where we had a house. I'll show you how this worked now. Across the lake is Door County. I don't know how many of you have been there, but Jim and I were there a couple years ago, and it's kind of a sister to Leelanau County. A lot the same. They have cherries and everything. So my dad would take the boat over to Fox Island, pick up lumber, go to, I can see it on here, Marinette, Wisconsin, where a boxcar would be waiting there. That would be unloaded by whoever he could find to unload it. Then go back to Fox Island, get another load of lumber, bring it to Northport. Then go back to Fox Island. It was just like back and forth like that. And in Wisconsin, some of it went to the M&M box company that made pallets, so that was like a softer kind of wood. But they also took lumber there for, I don't know the name of the company, but they made pianos, so it was a better kind of wood.
Gabby?
Mm-hmm.
How you may have said this and I missed it. To go from Northport to Fox and then over to Wisconsin. How long? How many days?
Well, once they went to Fox, they had to spend a day loading the lumber, and then I think it may have been maybe 4 hours or so. Do you know, Dave? How
I
long?
think it was about a little bit more than 5.
A little more than 5 to get to Marinette, because they did have to go down into Green Bay and, kind of a long way around. And then wait to unload. And we began buying property on South Fox in March of 1954, and construction of the Mackinac Bridge was begun in May of '54. The American Bridge Division of U.S. Steel put the first piece of structural steel in place July 2nd, 1955. This is, I think this is one of the things that holds up, I think there are 4 of these, that holds up the caissons, yeah. I'm not an engineer. U.S. Steel purchased the tug Pittsburgh, which had become Bailey from Milo Welch, and the steel-hulled boat was remodeled to become a workboat, classified as a tender. Before it had been a tug. Now it was a tender, and was one of many used by the Mackinac Ridge Authority to transport men and out to their work site and then back to the mainland. The name was changed to Bridgebuilder X or Bridgebuilder 10. I've seen it both ways, but I don't know what that X stands for. Because I didn't see any, I haven't seen any other boats called Bridgebuilder, like Bridgebuilder 9 or 8 or 7. It just seemed like, I don't know, maybe this was the 10th boat they bought for this, so they put an X on it. I don't know, because I haven't seen any of, but I haven't seen any other boats. Why did they have to number it?
Why was it 10 instead of, say, 2?
Why wasn't it just Bridgebuilder if there weren't any other Bridgebuilder boats by the name of Bridgebuilder? I don't know. I haven't talked to anybody that seems to know. The gross tonnage decreased from 45 to 37, just with the way they remodeled it. This is a closer view of that same picture. And I'm thinking this might be the Bridgebuilder, but I'm not positive. This is the angle it's at, and probably some of their boats looked sort of the same. This is the Bridgebuilder, I can tell by the design. Transporting a big crew of men to the work site. I think this is kind of a dark picture, and I think it was probably, and it looks like there are lights shining on their face. So I think it was probably taken early morning when they took them out to the site, or maybe the end of the day when they brought them back. And the sign, there's a sign on the side of this that looks like it might say Bidewee. Before I had the name up here, but I don't know, they might have just stuck a sign on there for some reason, I don't know. I'm not sure that's what it says, but it looks like it.
All those men on the boat?
Yes. Look how crowded that is. So you know, they're not all working from this boat. They're being taken to wherever they're going to be for the day.
They all have life jackets, of course. Don't you?
They do.
Oh, shoes?
And they all have lights on their helmets.
Like sunflowers.
Yep, they all have hard helmets and like hard hats and lights. This is another tug working on the bridge. Again, this could be the Bridgebuilder, but on the left, but I'm not really sure. It looks like it. Here the Mighty Mac is getting close to being done. Here the cables are spun. First they had to spin all these cables that are, it's hard to explain, but this is a cable, but each cable is full of finer wires, and they had almost like a round something, track that would go all the way up and spin part, and then whatever they did at the top, hook it, and all the way back and back and forth, spinning finer wires to make a heavy cable. And this is being made ready to hold the roadway. The bridge opened for traffic November 1st, 1957. This is the city of Petoskey. You might wonder what this is doing in here. In the fall of '57, my dad, mom, and their 5 kids, including me, traveled to St. Ignace by way of this car ferry, not long before the bridge opened. Now this is taken on the city of Petoskey with my dad and my sister Evelyn, the youngest in our family. And that was just a really fun day, I remember, going up there. This is my first first sight of the Bridgebuilder. We went to St. Ignace to see this boat. The Nickerson company had decided to purchase a boat that could hold more lumber than the Tramp. The Tramp was 65 feet long and this one was 65 feet too. But just by the design and the fact that this was steel-hulled and sturdier, the Tramp was a wood boat, I just thought that it could hold more. The day that we went there, I think this picture might have been taken a different month than when we went, because you can see ice there alongside it, but the day that we went, it was late in the fall, it might have been November, but I don't think they would have had ice there yet. I'm not sure. But we walked across the parking lot, which was a big lot, and this man hollered at us, and he said, "You can't be on here." And my dad said, went up to him and explained, "Yeah, we're here because we're buying this boat." So, okay. I think maybe the deal had already been made, but we were just going up to check it out. And this is a comparison that I did of how the Bidewee looked, and then changed to Bridgebuilder. So you can see, see that pilot house looks the same, the doors out the same way. There's just enough similarities that I think that this is the same boat. I think about houses being remodeled, and I never realized till I was doing all this how many times the same boat can be remodeled. Now this is in Leelanau County. The purchase of Bridgebuilder was completed January 1958, and this is taken in Grelikville at what used to be called the Sears Dock. It's owned by Traverse City Light and Power now. My dad was remodeling the boat once again for use as a lumber boat, and this is where he remodeled it. And I know you can't see it very well there, but I'm going to zoom in on it. It's kind of, show you where it is, right there. A little closer view. The Bridgebuilder's in the middle of the photo. And then another boat, the North Shore, is just below it. I'm going to go back one because I have some information on here. Oh, he was, my dad scraped so much paint off that boat and cut so much steel, he ended up with lead poisoning. And I remember him sitting, I'm not a medical person, but I remember him sitting with his foot under a light, the blanket over him. So, and that's a closer view. It's getting kind of blurry now to bring it in that close, but it was, the hull was subdivided by 3 steel bulkheads into 4 compartments, and I think that's the way it already was. It was propelled, here I go again, I'm talking about stuff I don't understand, but it was propelled by a 265 gray marine diesel engine. The draft was 3 feet in the forward and 8 in the aft. Now this part I do know. Quarters, which were back there, had 4 bunk beds in it, 2 sets of bunks. It had an electric galley range, a wood stove for heat, and chunks of wood for the stove.
Where did lumber go, up front then?
The lumber was down, I could probably show you better in another photo. Show you a little bit here, but it would be down in here. So my dad moved the pilot house back. See, it used to be up here a little, and he moved it back. Then they could put lumber way down in the bottom here and pile it up to the sides. Oops, skipped one. Now why do I say Nickerson? The application was made to change the name of the boat from Bridgebuilder to Nickerson. Sometimes the work was done at the Brooks Coal Dock in Sutton's Bay. This is a more recent picture, but beyond what you can see here, this pier was the Brooks Coal Dock. So the final work was done there. Now that's how it looked when we bought it. Remember back up when it was on dry land? And then after it was remodeled. You can see the lumber. Oh, it has lumber on it here. and down below. You can see how low it sits right now. The largest is full of lumber.
So was it actually changed to Nickerson?
Well, we got the official change after the boat was lost. The name had changed, so it was never known as Bridgebuilder. But, and here it is at the Sherry Dock, down here. The lumber company made an agreement with Hazrock people that owned the factory that they would pay for and help with the improvements to the pier and the docking area there. And they, if they could be allowed to tie up there for loading and unloading. They placed new wood pilings along there. I don't know if they're there in this picture, or if that's still the old, and corrugated metal. And then the railroad tracks, you know, ran right beside it, so those box cars could be there. I don't know if those were there before, or if the railroad went that way after we needed a space, or if they were already there for some other reason.
That was the dock that the car ferries used, so
Oh, they used that same dock?
so the train went right up to there.
Okay, that's good to know.
So the tracks were already there.
Mm-hmm. My dad didn't get much time off from work, you can guess. He was, you know, sometimes hard to keep track of whether he was home or on the boat. But we did make this trip to Chicago to a wedding. That's me, and I had a ponytail, and he used to like hang on to my ponytail, and you know, I wouldn't let go of it, so I couldn't move. My sister Nancy, my mom and dad. This was in Chicago. In November 1958, this is, I don't want to confuse you, this is still the Bridgebuilder, but I'm going to talk about the Laker Carl D. Bradley sunk off Beaver Island. And this vessel belonged to the Bradley Transportation Line, which is the limestone division of U.S. Steel. In the spring of 1959, a man named C.F. Buchema from the Bradley line visited South Fox Island, and he brought a crew of men with him to walk the shoreline and look for clues that might have floated up from the sunken Bradley and washed ashore on South Fox. Hopes that something would be recovered by washing ashore on the mainland or one of the islands. But nothing from the Badger sinking was ever found in South Fox. And of course, that time we never thought such a thing could happen to us.
Kathy, would the boxcars stay there until several loads of boats came with lumber on it, or would it just leave after the boat was unloaded?
I don't, Dave, you might know, how full would it get before, would it just be about full?
You can get about 2/3 full,
With one boat?
with just one boat loaded.
Okay,
And much of the time, it depended on when the locomotive was coming into town. They kind of ruled it.
yeah.
Or whenever they had something else to ship out, if they had cans of cases of cherries to ship out, the train came in, picked up that, took the boxcar.
Mhm. My cousin Betty and her husband Glenn Roop moved to Northport so that he could travel with my dad as lumber was taken to Wisconsin and Northport. This is the Bridgebuilder in Northport, and you can see faintly Bill Livingston's boat shop in the background. This is me, my sister Nancy. I think these are I think one of these is my sister Evelyn, and the other is my cousin Betty's daughter. That's my dad's thing there. I know because he always wore that kind of hat. This photo says November 1958, but that's only when it was developed. It would have been taken in the summer of that year. We don't have a lot of photos of the Bridgebuilder down there, and I wish we had more of the actual unloading and loading, but people didn't take as many pictures then. You had to pay to get them developed, you know.
That's right.
This is not a very good photo, but it's the only one that I have seen of the inside of the boat, and that's a bunk, and that's Dave Scott, who used to live here in Northport. It's not Marty Scott, it's a different Dave, but they're cousins, I think. That's him on the bottom bunk. And you can see at the back of the boat is that bigger porthole that goes right out to the back where there's a, kind of an open area there. In May of 1959, the Bridgebuilder struck bottom off South Fox Island during a heavy fog. My dad was on his way back to the island from Wisconsin. And he went down in the engine room and checked it over, didn't see anything wrong, and looked out over the sides as much as he could, and it looked okay, so he came on to Northport without any problem. The insurance carriers wanted the boat to have a thorough inspection before winter because of that scraping. It had been used all summer long, but by the end of the year they wanted it to be inspected to get ready for another season. So it was taken to Escanaba, which is right there, from Northport to Escanaba, to a company called the TD Vanette Company, and they were a boat repair business and inspectors. They took out the bottom plating, at least from part of it, and they took out 3.5 tons of cement ballast so that they could inspect the hull. And the original plan was that my dad would stay there in Escanaba and direct the work. He wanted to know what was going on and, have a say in it. But when they were trying to pull the boat, after they'd taken this cement out, they were trying to pull the boat up onto a little railroad area. And the car that was pulling it out, a pin broke that was supposed to be holding everything together, and they couldn't take the boat out. So they had to put it back in the water. And it was going to be quite a while before they'd get the right part to fix it. So my dad, and probably his dad, decided to take the boat instead from here down to Sturgeon Bay shipyards. There are a lot of boat repair, boats docked, and different things going on there. It was, like I said, it was in the middle of November when it was first taken to Escanaba, so it was getting toward the end of the year. And November is supposed to be a traditional bad month for high winds and all. So everything was delayed. My grandfather was pressuring, Dad, we got to get this boat back to Northport. I remember him saying that. Got to get this boat back to Northport. So they didn't have the company there that was inspecting it, found everything to be in pretty good shape. And they put some water in a tank for ballast, and they were somewhat concerned because it didn't have more ballast. But my dad said that he had a lot of heavy chain back here in Northport, and he would put that in once he got back here. His marine radio telephone was not working at the time. It was in the repair shop. And he had a two-way, he had a marine telephone that he could get weather reports on, but he couldn't call out. So on December the 14th, this is Door County, and he's down here in Sturgeon Bay. This is Washington Island up here, and this is Green Bay, and this is called Death's Door between here, where there have been a lot of shipwrecks there, and that's how it got its name. But he was down here, and he called home on the 14th to talk to my mother, and saying that it was too foggy, and he wasn't going to leave that day, and there was high winds coming up. And he would call the next day before he left on 15th, and maybe he would go through Death's Door, or maybe he would go through the ship canal just right out to Lake Michigan. If you went this way, it's kind of hard to see here, you'd be going pretty much straight across, so it's a little shorter. If you went down here, it's not a whole lot of difference. So, but in the lower one, he's into Lake Michigan sooner. When he didn't get a hold of my mother, he called his mother, who lived in Kingsley, and told her that, you know, he didn't know which way he'd be coming, but he was waiting for the next day. And he would call again before he left, but he didn't call. So we didn't know if he had left or not. You know, we were waiting for him to call. We didn't know if he left, which way he would take. Then on the 15th, in the afternoon, we lived right across from the school where Drummonds live now, and I would go home for lunch. And my granddad was on South Fox Island, and he called my mother that afternoon, the 15th, and just wanted to know if she had heard anything from him. And she hadn't. And he said, well, if they left Wisconsin, they should have been on South Fox Island by the middle of the morning. And here it was, I don't know, middle of the afternoon, early afternoon. And I remember going, it was at the end of the school day, and my mother was telling me about this phone call. But I think she was probably on the phone with him even more then. It was just a lot of confusion and worry because we didn't know. Had he left? Had he gone up that way? Had he gone up this way? Was he still in Green Bay somewhere? And nobody just happened to know where he was? And there were some phone calls, and nobody seemed to, in the ship canal, seemed to be able to tell us anything. This is Gill's Rock, which is up by Washington Island. If he had gone the northern route, he would have ended up going up Green Bay, up this way out through here. It was so confusing because nobody reported seeing it. You know, and we were getting worried, but we didn't know. We didn't even know if he left. My grandfather called the ship canal again, the Coast Guard, there, and there's more than one light in there, the night of December 16th. So last time anybody talked to him was on the 14th, and he was supposedly leaving the 15th. So my grandfather called him the night of December 16th, and then somebody said yes, they had seen him at 8:30 the morning of the 15th. So, you know, this was a day and a half later. And the Coast Guard said they had seen the Bridgebuilder leaving Sturgeon Bay by the ship canal straight into Lake Michigan at 9:20 in the morning, which would be right there. You know, I still don't know if somebody forgot to write it down and then they were putting it in later to cover their tracks, or if they just didn't look closely enough the first time and didn't see it. And I think maybe that was it, because then one place did record they'd seen him at 8:30 and the other, the Coast Guard, at 9:20. So it appears he went out at 9:20 in the morning. And it would have been, this is a winter time photo, so it probably would have looked something like this. But it was a little bit foggy, the reports later said, so. It was unseasonably warm that year. You can see a little bit of patches of snow that we had earlier, but this is taken about 9 days before Christmas. This is my sister Nancy and I, and we decided to put on our shorts, and we wrote Merry Christmas on the sign. Our mother took a picture. We still didn't know. You know, we were still hoping that he was going to come home. Maybe he had engine trouble and was stuck out in the lake someplace. Maybe he had gone to one of the other islands, you know, if it was windy or something. Things like that happened with boat traffic, you know. Sometimes you had to change your route and go somewhere else if it was bad. So, you know, we're still hoping. You see, we're smiling, but we don't know. Actually, by this time, we didn't have an ad anymore, but we didn't know it. In this picture, I was a month shy of 15, and my sister Nancy was 2 years younger than I was. That's the old Methodist church in the background. It isn't there anymore. It's where those tennis courts are. The Coast Guard, as soon as my grandfather reported that the boat hadn't shown up, Coast Guard started searching, and there were, any of you that lived here at the time and are old enough to remember, you might have some memory of this, that people from Northport, this was Christmas time, but people were out walking the beaches. The whole shore was walked from Northport Point along the lighthouse all the way down to Chicago, and the whole Upper Peninsula shore over to Wisconsin. Everything was searched, trying to find some clue, and there were private planes up looking, Coast Guard helicopters up looking, boats out, and nobody saw anything. There was somebody who had, before we knew the boat was missing, somebody had seen an oil slick between South Fox and South Manitou, but they went back up again to look for it after the boat was reported gone, and didn't see it, but they didn't know if it was skim ice or if it really was oil. The newspapers and the television, of course, reported it all, told people, see this little part says watch for clues, and it told people what to look for. There was the lifeboat that still had Bayouie on the side of it. It's something, and that wasn't tied down. I mean, for safety, you don't tie them down. So if something happens, you want your boat to float, so. But that boat was never found. And there were life jackets, there were chunks of wood from the heat stove. There were things that should have floated, and nothing was ever found. This was the long winter for us. The warm weather left right at Christmas time, right after Christmas, and winter came, and I don't have to tell you what a sorrow this was for our family and for all the people in Northport. I know it was. We got a letter from C.F. Buchanan, who had been on South Fox, looking for the Bradley survivors or something to float up from the Bradley. And I know you can't really read that there. It's too small, but I'm going to read a little bit of it. This is to my grandfather. Dear Mr. Nickerson, I'm very shocked and saddened to learn of the loss of your son, Sterling, his crewman, and your ship a month ago. Mr. Wendell Long, our attorney, who together with me enjoyed your hospitality on South Fox this spring, extend to you our sincere condolences. You will recall that as we were trampling the shore of South Fox Island, looking for debris and bodies which might have originated from the Bradley disaster, you very kindly assisted us with transportation to the northern end of the island and extended your hospitality to include us for dinner that evening at your lumber camp. It was our pleasure at that time to meet the son you have lost. Subsequent to that occasion, we had heard many nice things about him and you from your good friend, Captain Dick Lyons of the Mackinac Islander, as we spent a week with him in association with our underwater investigation regarding Bradley. I know that your loss is a great shock to you both you and Mrs. Nickerson, and I hope the attached little verse that we ran in our house organ ML screenings in commemoration for the loss of the Bradley seaman may bring you some comfort. And then he included that poem on the right. This is a picture of some of the Nickerson family, my dad, and this was taken a little bit earlier, about 5 years earlier. My dad, my mom, my grandma Nickerson, my dad's 2 brothers, their wives, kids. That's me, my brother Sterling, John, Nancy, Ellen's being held by my dad. But I just put this picture in here because we did a lot of things together, this whole family. Before they went to the island, they were doing stock car racing and always doing some crazy thing. But we spent a lot of time together. Spent a lot of time on the island together, traveling back and forth and exploring, cousins went back and forth all the time. And every Christmas we were together. Every Christmas, all day long. I remember that from first time I could ever remember anything. So, this tragedy was hard on all of us. It was hard on my cousins, who were even, younger than I am, everybody. These are 2 photos of my dad. The left one, it was either for a gun permit or for his boat pilot's license. I'm not sure what. which one, but he was only 37 when he was lost. His Army photo really shows more the way I remember him, because he did have a serious side, but he also liked to joke and tease.
Looks just like Steve.
Do you think so?
Steve looks like him.
Yeah, he kind of does.
On the right.
Uh-huh.
It's the expression.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The eyes.
The following September in 1960, the body of Glenn Root, my cousin's husband, washed ashore in Manitowoc, about 50 miles south of Sturgeon Bay Ship Canal. The coroner said he believed Glenn's body had only recently been released from the sunken boat because of cold water, deep water had somewhat preserved it, and Glenn's wallet was still in his jeans pocket, along with his identification. That's how they knew who he was. I mean, this was all like 10 months later. So, you know, and all that summer, we still looked for things on the beach. If we went to the beach, we're still looking for things. And this was the first and only thing that ever turned up. But when Glenn was found, of course, then we wondered if my dad would be found. But he never was. He was only 27 when he was lost, and my cousin Betty had a hard road ahead of her. She had just moved to Northport a few months before all this happened, and then she moved to Traverse City after Glenn was lost. And but while she was still here in Northport, I mean, the people in Northport really showed a lot of kindnesses to both of our families, even though they hardly knew her. These are their kids, taken shortly after the tragedy. You see, they're really close in age. The oldest one was only 4. And I still keep in touch with those cousins. The families have done a lot of different things to remember the dads that were lost. When the Marston Day Marina was first completed, the poem that I showed you earlier that the Bradleys sent to us, I didn't read it, but we asked if that could be put on a plaque, but the committee, whoever the committee was, decided no, because it was the Marston Dame thing and not a, I don't know. Anyway, that wasn't what they wanted. But they did say that they needed a flagpole, and we could donate the flagpole if we liked. So my grandparents paid for the flagpole, and the Coast Guard assisted when the first flag was raised. We had a little ceremony there. My brother Sterling joined the Coast Guard soon after that. That's my brother John beside him. There's a little plaque on the flagpole that just says who it's in memory of. But I went down and looked at it the other day, and someone had, the 2 screws are there, but the brass plaque is ripped apart, so we'll have to replace that somehow. This is the 40th anniversary of the loss. My cousin Betty in the red sweater. She remarried, but not till after all of her children were raised. They're all really nice kids. We got together at a church in Kingsley and had a meal and just some sharing. My mother remained a widow. She died of cancer in 1977, so she was already gone before this. And you may have seen this bench down by the water. On the 50th anniversary, or, well, not the anniversary because that would have been in the winter, but commemorating 50 years, my brothers and sisters and I had this bench made and the plaque that goes with it in honor of both of our parents. And it sits facing the place where the Bridgebuilder used to be tied up and unloaded lumber. A couple of years ago, I painted this picture of the Bridgebuilder next to the railroad cars. It's taken from one of those photos that I'll show you the original. I took a little liberty with it because I added the boys going to work. Well, that's kind of, I have prints of that. Maybe every once in a while I have prints of it. But my sister Evelyn, she was barely 6 when our dad was lost, so that's the Methodist church behind her in the old school, and the school bus. I had so many memories of family things and our island adventures, and just knowing my parents more than she did because she was so young. And I knew she would never get to have those memories, and my brother John was only 9, so he wouldn't have the same understanding quite either. So after my mother died in 1977, I started writing our family story, and it took me 30 years to do it, to get it done. But I started this, and then I went off on writing my Fox Island book and another one, and I keep coming back to this, and twice it got wiped out on my computer. But I did always make a habit of when I would write a few pages, I would print them. So I still had it, but I just had to type it all in again. But my brothers and sisters appreciate this, especially my youngest sister Evelyn. She said, now I understand who they were.
It's a wonderful book. I can hardly put it down when I read it.
Thank you. As I said, my dad was never found, and the Bridgebuilder's never been found. Those, it's a 65-foot steel-hulled boat. Someday it may be found. But, the loss of the boat isn't nearly as important to me as the loss of my dad. When I look at a map that shows water depths, if you go from Sturgeon Bay outlet into Lake Michigan to Fox Island where it should have been, that's the deepest part of the lake. So, I don't know what the chances are of it being found. Locating it would give some clue as to what happened. I don't know. Back then, they didn't have all the sonar scanning things that they do now. So, and there are divers that are always looking for shipwrecks and know that this is one that's not been found. So, it may be found someday. A few years ago, I was at a Lighthouse Festival and met this great lake singer, Lee Murdoch, and I told him about the loss of the Bridgebuilder. And he came to my house one day, and he looked through my photos and my scrapbooks, and then he called me about a month later saying that he was in Ludington and could I meet him there, that he had a song for me. So I met him at a restaurant there, and in the parking lot, he got his guitar out of his car and he sang this song, My Mother's Eyes. And he wrote this song as though it was me saying the words. So I didn't know he was going to do that, but it's a really nice song. And the title of the album is Between Two Worlds. So when you go to the marina, the pier there where the anchor is displayed, this is right down by where the anchor is. Just, remember the Bridgebuilder was once there. And it gave a lot of jobs to people. It was a good business thing in Northport. Bought a lot of supplies here. People looked for it coming in, heard it coming in, heard it going out. And it's not, as I said earlier, it's not just my history or my family's, it's a history, it's part of Northport's history. And that's why I do this. This is the last one, so this is what it looks like today. He was on the farther pier, which you can kind of see behind, but just, I can't ever be down there without thinking about it, of course. Just when you're down there next time, remember the Pittsburgh Byway Bridgebuilder tug freighter. I used to sit here. I don't want to be too long here, but I just want to read one thing that I wrote one day. It's like what ifs, because we all have what ifs. What if the Bridgebuilder hadn't scraped the reef in May 1959? What if the insurance company had insisted on an inspection and ballast hadn't been removed? What if the pin hadn't broken at Vinette's and the Bridgebuilder would have come home in November? What if it hadn't been foggy on December 14th and the Bridgebuilder had sailed a day earlier? What if my dad had phoned home before he left Wisconsin on December 15th so relatives would know he had departed? What if the bridge builder would have sailed up Green Bay instead of straight out to Lake Michigan? What if the gale hadn't come up in northern Lake Michigan the day the bridge builder left Wisconsin? What if the marine telephone had been working? What if the cell phone would have been invented earlier? What if the Nickersons never would have logged South Fox Island? What if Glenrook wouldn't have come to work on the boat just a few months before it went missing? What if my dad would have stayed an auto mechanic instead of being a boat pilot? Or on the other hand, what if any number of others from Northport had been on the boat, as they often were? What if my brother Sterling had been on the boat, which he would have been during the summer? What if my mother had been on the boat as she traveled, excuse me, I'm losing my voice, as she traveled to Wisconsin with Dad just a few months earlier? What if I had been on the boat? Because many times I have traveled to South Fox Island on the Manistee, the Tramp, and the Bridge Builder. So, you know, you can fill your life with what ifs, and you know, and it doesn't change anything. It's just. And my mother said to us after we knew my dad wasn't coming back, she said, "Well, you know, we could blame your grandfather because he said we've got to get that boat back home." She said, "I don't want any of you to do that." So we don't.